I would echo Melissa's welcome and say how wonderful it is to see such a great crowd here today. I'm sure many of you were expecting to see children's books or apples or something schoolish on your tables, given that I'm a newly retired teacher and our speaker is also a teacher. But when I thought about Alex and I thought about today's topic of mindfulness, my mind immediately went to my happy place, the beach, and my happy color. And I went with it. So no books, no teacher things, my attempt to set the mood. From the time I was approached about being program chair, which is brand new for me, I've anticipated the opportunity to introduce you, the women of First Presbyterian, to some of the amazing individuals that I was blessed to call colleagues during my tenure at Collegiate. Now that time is here, and I really couldn't be more thrilled. I met our speaker 13 years ago when he was introduced at our opening faculty meeting. I was impressed then, just hearing his credentials, but little did I know the impact that Alex would have on my life and the lives of so many others. Interestingly enough, 14 years before I met Alex, I met his beautiful wife, Sarah, who was one of my second graders. One of my favorite second graders, and yes, I know teachers are not supposed to have favorites, but so be it. Back to our guest of honor. Alex Peavy grew up in Charlottesville, where he began his personal practice of mindfulness at the age of 15. He earned a BA in psychology from the University of Virginia and additional degrees from VCU, which include a master's in sports leadership and a master's in counselor education. After 4 years as the basketball coach at Wofford College in South Carolina, Alex came to collegiate school as a teacher, coach, and personal counselor. He first brought mindfulness to our boys' basketball team, and later he created a class on this as a life skill. Each year, Alex teaches a 2-week class to every freshman, and this has evolved into professional development offerings for faculty, as well as workshops for parents. 2 years ago, he created a semester-long elective for seniors called Mindful Leadership. This course focuses on service-based leadership rooted in compassion for others and goodwill toward the world around us. You will soon realize these are hallmarks of our speaker. Outside of school, Alex has presented on the topic of mindfulness at schools, colleges, churches, businesses, and regional and international conferences. He leads Mindful Mondays at the Cameron Gallagher Foundation, serves on the faculty of the Chrysalis Institute, and consults for health and family psychologists of Virginia. I'm guessing he doesn't sleep. Maybe we'll have to ask Sarah about that. I should acknowledge that Alex cautioned me about using the photograph I chose for our bulletin board, as he is one who believes in full disclosure. If you read any of our promos for the program, however, thank you, Marsha Williams, you undoubtedly noted that in addition to Alex's incredible resume, he's also a cancer warrior. I trust he will be sharing with us just how mindfulness and the love and support of Sarah and his precious children, Bodie and Jane, are helping him on this new and challenging journey. Alex, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Melissa and thank you, Blair, for all of this, and to all of you all for being here and hopefully gaining something from this that I gained from others. None of this is mine. It's passed down to me and I can pass it on to you. And I second the notion on the beautiful decorations, because I also find the beach is my happy place, and love the quotes. I was able to walk around, and a lot of these quotes I've never even seen before. So thank you, Blair, for all the time spent on that. And I do want to begin with a little bit of a story, and it's a story you may have heard before. It's a story to create basically an image and an idea in our mind, and it's a simple story. It's the starfish story. It goes well with all the decorations on the table, and it's about, you may have heard, a little girl walking down the beach and coming across a bunch of starfish, hundreds of them at low tide, right? The water had gone out and it exposed all the starfish, and so this little girl, what does she do? She starts picking up the starfish and throwing them back into the ocean. And eventually a man comes walking down the beach on his morning stroll, and he says to her, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm trying to save these starfish lives. They need the water. They need the water. If they're not in the water, they may die. So I'm picking them up and throwing them back in the water one at a time." And he looked around, because there were literally hundreds of them around them, and he said, "But there are hundreds. You can't make any difference at all." And she bent down, picked up a starfish, threw it in the water, and said, "I made a difference for that one. I made a difference for that one." And we often kind of take the perspective of the child and understand what a beautiful act she was doing. We take the perspective of maybe the man who didn't know what was happening and looked at the impossibility of kind of the task in front of her. But I also want you to think of the starfish and ask yourself, what if you were the starfish? And be aware of that notion that part of taking care of others also involves taking care of ourselves. And so how do we help ourselves so that we can help others is ultimately the question I want to ask. And I say that as a counselor who hopes to help with kids and families every single day in what my role is at school. So how do we help others? Ultimately, it comes back to helping ourselves. And I want to read a quote from, well, first, before I want to say is, in order to help with ourselves, we've got to recognize the fact that we've kind of gotten caught up in this notion of doing. We are constantly doing. And if you notice, we never stop and allow ourselves to just be. And that's where I want us to really listen to the words of Norman Vincent Peale, who said, "It's impossible to have peace of soul if one's tempo or pace is so feverishly accelerated. God will simply not go that fast. He basically says, go ahead, and when you're worn out, I'll offer you my healing. But I can make your life rich if you will only slow down and live and move and have your being in me." Have your being in me. So I always like to ask, are we human doings or human beings? Right? Because if we look around at the pace of the world around us, you would confuse what the actual name of our species is. It looks a lot more like human doings. And so what happens is, if we're not careful, life becomes something we do, right? It becomes something we just get through, rather than life being something we actually live. And that's the part we can't miss in this process. So that's where I want to tie this to the practice of mindfulness and how it can help us live, how it can help us be. And it doesn't mean you stop doing, it just makes sure that your being infiltrates everything you do. But that being has to come first. And so first, just the notion of the definition. If you've never heard of mindfulness, or you heard the word over and over and over probably, but don't know what the root definition in regards to how I'm speaking of it is mindfulness is paying attention on purpose in the present moment with non-judgment. I'll say that again, it's paying attention on purpose. So there's an intentionality about it. In the present moment, now, and then the hardest part is dropping our judgments. And it doesn't mean we let go of our opinions. I wish almost it was defined as awareness of judgment so that we can let go of those judgments. So it's experiencing the judgments we have and letting them go, because our judgment are not always accurate. And so what I want us to do to truly begin here is take a couple moments to practice some mindfulness, some practice being here. Not somewhere else, or not getting through this talk. I'm sorry if some of you are like, my gosh, when's he done? Practice being here now, because we lose practice of presence over the course of our life with our constant doing. So for a brief moment, I ask ourselves to give ourselves permission to just be. And part of the practice of mindfulness is that definition I just gave you, but it's also tapping into something that we've been blessed with, which is our senses, the 5 senses that we have. And what you want to figure out is, what senses are you most comfortable with that call to you, that help you return and kind of be anchored in the present moment? Because we'll get pulled away by something. What can bring us back is awareness of whatever we're sensing right now. And in this particular practice, what I want to focus on is the practice of certainly awareness of our breath, the awareness of touch, and the awareness of sound, because it's all available to us, because we're all breathing, we're all touching, and we're all hearing the things going on around us. And the key with all of it is letting go of judgment in the process, letting go of judgment and just experiencing what is. So to begin, what I'd like to ask is, from a posture standpoint for a seated practice, is have both feet flat on the floor, just for now. You don't have to do this the rest of the way, but for this brief practice, it's an arriving, it's a practice of presence. And with your hands, like, what do I do with my hands? Are they on the table, on my lap? The main thing is having them in a comfortable position to where you're using the least amount of muscles as possible. So we don't want to fold our hands tightly for this practice, but maybe just have them in your laps. And then it's, what do I do with my eyes? That's up to you. Some of us feel comfortable with closing our eyes, some of us don't. So do what's right for you. If you have your eyes open during this practice, what I would say is kind of gaze out in front of you about where a book would be, but you have no book there. You're not looking at anything in particular, you're just allowing the eyes to rest. If you are comfortable with closing the eyes, go ahead and do that. But I want to rephrase that. Don't close your eyes. What I want us to do is let go of our eyelids. One of the attitudes of mindfulness is a practice of letting go of everything that happened before this moment, letting go of everything that's come with the rest of the day. But also, physically, let's let go of our eyelids so that they either close all the way, or if you want them open, they can close halfway. And ask yourself, am I squinting? Am I squeezing my eyes tightly shut? And if so, relax the eyes, relax the eyebrows. Do a check with your jaw and be aware if you're clenching your teeth, and if so, let them drop open. Even if it's just by a millimeter, relax the jaw. And ask yourself, what are my shoulders doing right now? And if they're up around your ears, let them go. We typically carry most of the tension of our day in our shoulders, so let those drop. And then just scan through the body and search for any muscles that are being used that don't need to be, and let them go, let them relax, let them release. And I want you to notice, even though we have a bit of stillness in the body, there's always that movement of the breath. So let's just be aware of that without judgment. Can you feel how your body moves with the breath? The chest fills with air and expands. And then as the air goes back out, you can feel the chest kind of contract back in. Just notice that. And next, what I want us to do is, on your own pace, take a handful of deep breaths, because it's the deeper breathing that actually triggers the relaxation response. So go ahead and take a deep breath in that fills the stomach first, then the chest, and try to make your out breath longer than your in breath. Slow it down. Don't strain, but slow it down. Do that again. Another deep breath in, and this time when you exhale, imagine you're letting go of every muscle in the body. Just let go, drop it. Whenever the time is right for you, take another deep breath in, followed by that long, slow exhale. And when you get to the end of that exhale, let go of your breath. Let the body take back over. The body knows how to breathe, when to breathe, so just let it do the work for you. But at any moment, whether it's this practice or during the course of the day, whenever you feel the need, feel free to take a deep breath and extend that exhale to just drop into the moment. And shift your focus now from the breath to the sense of sound. And remember, we're going to pay attention to sound without judgment. There are no good sounds or bad sounds. Sounds don't go away because you dislike them. They actually become louder in our mind. So instead of trying to ignore any sounds, what we're going to do for a moment is just listen to the sounds we're surrounded by in the room, in the building, even outside the building. And just listen and ride the sounds out rather than resisting any of them. Just let them all be here right with us. What do you hear? Just notice. What sounds come and go? What sounds are constant? Just notice it. What does the body feel like as you hear those sounds? Not how should it feel, but just how does it feel? Then slowly move into the body. What I want us to do now is pay attention to the sense of touch. Can you feel the chair underneath you? You've been sitting in this chair the whole time, but have you been feeling it? Same with the feet touching the floor. Your feet have been touching the floor the whole time, but have you felt that yet? What does it feel like to have your feet rest on the floor? Very intentionally relax the feet. We walk on them all day, so right now let them do nothing. And just kind of expand that awareness to the whole body, including the breath. Outside the body, including the sounds. Just noticing everything you feel, everything you hear, and the breath. Check in with the shoulders, let them drop. And when the time is right for you, take a deep breath in and follow that with an exhale, a long exhale, and slowly allow the eyes to open. Move your hands, move your feet a little bit, and do our best not to shift from going from being mindful to, okay, now I'm not mindful, I'm done with that little practice we just did. It's transitioning mindfulness into this moment. It doesn't have to be a quiet, seated practice. It's an interactive human practice. And so just ask yourself, and you're allowed to shift and sit in whatever posture you choose, ask yourself, what does my body feel like right now? And I want to emphasize there's no certain way your body's supposed to feel. A lot of people think that mindfulness is a relaxation practice. It's actually an awareness practice. So sometimes we do one of those practices and feel more anxious than when we started. That's okay, that you're not doing it wrong. It is an awareness of how you do feel. So we can't relax ourselves until we know we're not relaxed. And so part of mindfulness is bringing an awareness to that discomfort. Or if you're sitting there and we don't know that our shoulders are tight, we can't relax them until we're aware of that. So it's bringing awareness to whatever is. So however you felt from that, you did it right. That's the point. It's just awareness of how we do feel. So the other part of that is through those senses, we're able to practice presence, the awareness of this moment. And as my own teacher said so much better than I can, John Kabat-Zinn, he said, each moment missed is a moment unlived. And each moment missed makes it more likely I'll miss the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment, and so on. And so you see what we were doing right there is really bringing ourselves to this moment. We were not ignoring anything. We were experiencing everything that's here right now. And too often we fail to do that. And with that, we fail to truly live in this moment. You see, Kabat-Zinn started mindfulness as a medically based practice in the West at UMass Medical School over 30 years ago. And it's now at over 700 hospitals across the world and in medical schools because of many of the positive benefits that come out of it. And they wouldn't be doing this at hospitals if there wasn't research behind it. That's the important thing to really emphasize here. They don't just do it on a whim there. There's got to be research behind it, and that's what he established over time, is the amazing outcomes. And what you start to see is when you practice things like what we just did, is you do little things that are huge things, actually. You start to increase your white blood cell count. You start to boost your immune system. You start to decrease inflammation. And so I can tell you firsthand how important that's been for me the last 6 months in regards to approaching cancer, is being a participant in my own healing, not a cause in my own destruction. And so being aware of not having hard days, but when I do, the ability to sit with that hard day and let it go. And practice in healing, both by the medicine I take, but with the attitude I take as well. And amazingly, neurologically, mindfulness can change the brain. They find after just 100 minutes of practicing mindfulness, you literally start to change the structure of your brain. And it doesn't have to be 100 consecutive minutes. It could be like what we just did, a few minutes added up here and there. It's practicing presence. And so it's helping people with all kinds of challenges, from little kids with ADD up to those of us in our older years who have neurological decay, which is natural. That's a natural human process that gets slowed through the practice of mindfulness. And one of the most important neurological impacts, I believe, is that mindfulness actually cultivates love and compassion. It's an amazing thing. Practicing mindfulness cultivates love and compassion. And it used to be like, oh, that just feels good to say. Well, now the neuroscience can back it. They have these amazing studies. One of these studies they did was they have a group of people separate from mindfulness just to see how our brain works. They hook people up to a brain imaging machine so they can see what parts of the brain are getting activated. And they had this group of people in a study watch movies that would cause compassionate feelings within the person. And so whenever the person was feeling compassion, the neuroscientists could see on the brain imaging what part of the brain would light up. And so basically there is a part of our brain that is directly associated with the practice of compassion and love. And to take this now a step further, they started hooking people up to brain imaging machines who were practicing mindfulness, doing what we just did right there. And in that study, they found that when you practice meditation, when you practice mindfulness, the same part of your brain lights up that does for love and compassion. So as we know, when you fire certain neurons, you wire those neurons, you're literally building a part of your brain. And so through the practice of mindfulness, you're neurologically cultivating the part of the brain that helps you love more, have more compassion. And I would rather love and compassion shape my brain than stress. Just like I would rather cancer not determine the health of my body, but the way that I approach every single day. And so the question is, what shapes your brain? And it's simply the attitudes and the responses we have on a daily basis ultimately shapes our brain. And so why does this happen? Well, again, there's a neurological explanation when you think of it from the sense that mindfulness, what you just did for a moment was allow your body to settle, finally, after going, gotta do this, gotta run here, gotta do here, gotta make sure I'm on time, and then you just settle. It is an act of self-compassion. And that's what you're cultivating initially, is when we are kind to ourselves, we then have the ability to be kind to others. But it has to start with yourself. And it's ultimately the most unselfish thing you can do. And that's where, again, if someone were to walk in this room and say, what are they doing? They're just sitting there. So much is going on in our brain while we're just sitting there. You could walk into a weight room and see a bunch of people building muscles by what they're doing. If they walked in here, we're building this muscle, the muscle of compassion that exists within our brain and that exists in the neurons that are actually wrapped around our heart as well. And that's where I want to emphasize that mindfulness is a practice. It's a continuum. There won't be a day where you're like, okay, now I get it, I'm mindful. And I like the analogy of mindfulness being like catching wind in a bag. As soon as you catch the wind in a bag, you just got a bag full of air, right? You don't have the wind anymore. And so as soon as we think we know mindfulness, all of a sudden life throws us a curveball and we've got to practice again and practice again. And that's the beauty, is life provides us with the opportunity to practice, which then means life provides us with the opportunity to cultivate compassion with everything it throws at us. It's a great opportunity, and I hope we take it. And I think of some of the quotes I see might be from Thich Nhat Hanh. He talks about there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. And so it's realizing what we can discover for whether it's happiness, peace, compassion, all of those things are found within ourselves, not externally. But we then externalize them by finding them here first. St. Augustine, who's one of the fathers of the Christian church, wrote a beautiful quote, which I'll read to you. We must meditate on what we read until an interpretation be found that tends to establish the rule of love. Whoever therefore thinks that he understands the divine scripture in a way that does not build the double love of God and neighbor. I love that, the double love, God and neighbor. Not just God, not just neighbor, but God and neighbor. So I'll say that again. Whoever therefore thinks that he understands the divine scripture in a way that does not build the double love of God and neighbor does not understand it at all. Whoever finds a lesson there useful to the building of charity and love is in the right. So what we're doing, again, is cultivating presence in ourselves, to be able to cultivate compassion in ourselves, to then be able to cultivate it in others. What a wonderful opportunity. And how do we practice this? It sounds so complicated, but it's so simple. Again, it begins with a breath. Practice of awareness of the breath. And the good news is our breath is always there for us. Some compare it to like having if you ever play music and you have a metronome that keeps the beat for the song, like tick, tick, tick. The breath is the metronome of the body that gives us the opportunity to tune back into the present moment. And so if you find yourself at any given day, any given moment during the day with that tension that may exist, just take that deep breath and exhale. And what's beautiful about the breath is recognizing that the root word of breath comes from the word spiritus, spirit, right? So spirit and breath are one and the same. In Hebrew, breath and spirit are the same word, ruah. And even in the ancient Polynesian language of the Hawaiians, the word ha means breath and spirit. So when you say aloha, aloha, you are essentially acknowledging the spirit and breath in the other person. So all these languages, spiritus, ruah, aloha, going back thousands of years, all mean the same thing. What a beautiful notion. And what makes our breath possible? It's the divine breath, the divine spirit. So the divine spirit has given us our breath and thus has given us our presence. But unfortunately, we spend a large percentage of our day and our life existing everywhere except the present moment. We are essentially robbing ourselves of the miracle that God has blessed us with, which is now, right now. And what's crazy, to go back to the research side of things, is research shows that we spend close to 60% of our waking hours not in the present moment, with the mind elsewhere. And I don't mean like planning for the future. This doesn't mean just go at life with no plans at all. Intentionally planning for the future is an act of presence. What I'm talking about is rumination, where we reflect on the past and we get stuck in a rut and we just tell the same story. Can you believe that she said that this, that, that, that? We get stuck in this story over and over and over and over. Or we're nervous about the future and we dwell with the future before it arrives with a fear-based internal reaction. And what's amazing about our body's mechanism is that when we ruminate on the past, or we fear the future, the body doesn't know that it's not happening right now. So whatever we think, the body feels right now as if it's happening, even though everything right now is fine. So the question is, what do you bring to this moment? What do you bring to this moment? And again, it doesn't mean never ruminate again, never fear the future again. It means catch yourself doing it, noticing it, not judging it, letting it go, and coming back. And that's practice. Again, we are imperfect at this. And I'm also not asking us to ignore the past or the future, but to apply our wisdom of life upon the past and preparing for a future in a way that acknowledges the fact that the only time we will ever be alive is right now. And now. And now again. See how that happens? Like, oh, now. And that's the liberating part of it. And we also don't want to get to the end of our life and realize that we haven't lived at all because we missed all those nows along the way. So literally tapping into our senses, taking a breath, gives us spiritus, gives us breath, gives us life. So it's the present that actually liberates us from getting stuck in the past or getting stuck in the future. And I want to acknowledge that there are many doors to the same room of presence. Like some of you may have come in that door, that door, that door. Same thing with presence. You can come into the present with breath. You can come into the present with noticing your feet touching the floor. You can notice the sounds of the room. You can figure out what's right for you, but the question is, which of kind of our anchors allows us to drop back into now in regards to our senses, because they're always there for us. Use them. And we have this amazing system in the body, the stress response system, fight or flight, which you've probably heard about. And it does a great job at saving our life in life-threatening situations. So like if a bear walked in the room right now, I hope we would have fight or flight. That's a good time to have this internal response of, oh no, let's do something about this. The problem is we don't live constantly with grizzly bears, but we treat non-life-threatening events as life-threatening events. And again, our body can't separate the two. So it starts to deteriorate us in a way that is counter to productivity, it's counter to our health, counter to peace, and counter to love. Because we're not very loving when we're in fight or flight. We often make decisions we regret. And so the opposite of fight or flight is the relaxation response. And again, from a neurological standpoint, the relaxation response is what you feel in moments of peace, the peace you experience maybe right before you fall asleep, or it's that contentment you feel when you catch the sunset. You're like, oh, it's beautiful, right? That's an internal relaxation response. And it's even the neurological state of mind that occurs if you've ever played music, or if you're an artist or you play a sport and you enter into the zone state. From the brain level of things, that all of that is happening. It's the same neurologically. And what's so key is to know that we can trigger the relaxation response the same manner in which we can trigger fight or flight. We can either freak ourselves out with panic, or we can calm ourselves down. So ultimately the choice becomes ours when we bring awareness to it. So as I said earlier, what we want to do is to take a deep breath, right? Because the way the brain works is when you take that deep breath in and follow it with a long, slow exhale, you're actually triggering the relaxation response in the body that's helping you calm down. So for all those years someone's told you, take a deep breath, or you've told other people, take a deep breath, you're right. Like there's an actual neurological thing going on there when we take a deep breath. And let's not forget our breath, because that's our spirit. It's our divine spirit that's always right here available to us. And so we have the choice to choose our breath, to choose love over anger at any given moment. And let me clarify again, and maybe the most important clarification of the day, is that this doesn't mean every moment's perfect. We are going to get angry. We're going to have sadness. We're going to have frustration. And so what I want us to do is to recognize emotions, these negative emotions, are natural human emotions. And the key is, when you're angry, I hope you feel anger. And when you're sad, I hope you feel sadness and cry. And when you're frustrated, I hope you feel frustrated. The key is that we don't allow any of those emotions to take us over. So it's the difference between feeling an emotion and becoming an emotion. That's where we separate the two. Because a lot of people think mindfulness is like suppressing all the negative emotions. No, you actually feel them more, and it can be scary. You feel sadness, but you don't act from sadness. You feel anger, but you don't act from anger. It arises, and then you let it go. The same way we let go of our eyelids at the very beginning, just let it go. Again, easier with an eyelid than it is with anger. But it's recognizing that giving yourself permission to experience emotions is the beginning of it. The important part is not being controlled by those emotions. I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said, whatever is begun in anger ends in shame, right? So it's the ability to feel anger and just sit with it, not go do something because you're angry. That usually don't work out. And so may we feel these emotions to their fullest, because that's part of living, that's part of life, but may we also take a deep breath and return to our spirit, to our foundation of compassionate thought and action. It was Paul who wrote, the fruit of the Spirit, the fruit of the breath, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness. So the outgrowth from our breath, from our spirit, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness. Can you imagine a world where when things go wrong, when we have our most difficult emotions, in the next moment we responded with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness? Imagine a world where instead of fight or flight, we respond with love. And it doesn't mean we don't have fight or flight. It means we experience it, let it go, and make a choice towards compassionate action at any given moment. And so how do we create such a world? We just do that one at a time with ourselves and experience the calamity of any given day, which presents the opportunity for peace of mind. How does it present the opportunity for peace of mind? Through the unsettling of the mind. And so again, how do we create a world that responds with compassion? We begin with ourselves one at a time, just like the starfish, one at a time. It shouldn't feel unsurmountable due to the magnitude of the world. It should be very attainable to the presence of myself, of ourselves. And when we take that deep breath, we actually cleanse the mind, we cleanse the heart, and we actually see with greater clarity. Remember, a big part of this is non-judgment. So the ability to see the world with clarity rather than clouded by judgment. And this is where the beautiful practice of experiencing the settling mind comes in. And really it presents to us over and over throughout the day. And at any given moment, we get these opportunities for presence. And so again, it's not about perfection. It's about, if I have an emotion like anger or frustration or sadness, and I'm over here, I'm angry, I notice it, I let it go, and I come back. And part of the letting go is taking a deep breath, releasing the tension in the body, informing the body that we're good, and the body informs the mind, and it's a neurofeedback loop. And as we improve in that gentle practice of noticing in neutral moments, just the everyday moments, just asking yourself every now and then, what's my body doing right now? Oh, my shoulders are up, I'm going to let those drop. Or I'm clenching my teeth. That's what I do when I don't pay attention. I clench my teeth. Every now and then I notice my teeth are doing that, I just let them drop. And as I go throughout the day, I just try to remind myself at these little moments, how does my body feel? I'm going to let my body release the tension. And no one around me knows that happening, but that little neutral practice allows me then to be able to do it more readily when an emotion arises. And so with every emotion we experience, and let's say, just take an everyday, let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. We know what that feels like. We can feel it right now, just thinking about it. Kind of the shoulders tense, you almost feel this jolt of energy go through your body when you get cut off in traffic. Ooh, why'd they do that to me? And it's a natural human response, and it's scary too. So we have this internal reaction, but now the cutting off in traffic is over with. Nothing has happened, but we still sometimes cling to that. We grip that steering wheel. And so instead of getting mad at the person who cut us off and think how horrible they are, maybe they're rushing to the hospital. It's a husband trying to make it on time to his wife who's giving birth to their child. Maybe there's a different story. Maybe there's a different story, and we don't know the story. And what's less important than the story, or what's more important than the story, is our response. Because that car it cut us off is already headed off into the world. Now the question is, what are we doing in our car? And so what I want us to do in moments like those, that again presents itself daily, is notice that jump, feel it, and let it go. How do we experience the settling mind? We become aware of the unsettled mind. Well, thank goodness for the guy in traffic who cut me off, who allowed me to have an unsettled mind, because it allowed me to have that spike of energy, and now to take back over control, release, let go, and all of a sudden, instead of cultivating anger, I've made the choice to cultivate compassion for whatever his story may be and why he cut me off. And now, wherever I'm headed, I don't bring anger with me everywhere I go throughout the day, because I can't let go of whoever cut me off first thing this morning. And so it's this choice that constantly gets presented to us through these actions throughout the day, and the choice is to focus on the breath or to get caught up in the physiological response to emotions. The choice is to focus on anger or love. And I think we know which one is more pleasant to focus on, and it's not ignoring the other, it's experiencing the other, let it go and return. And so with this, I want us to see that, again, the practice of experiencing the settling mind requires self-awareness. It also requires the world around us to allow us to cry, to allow us to laugh, and allow us to experience what it means to be human. And what I want us to do is think of that as a personal practice. Noticing, letting go, and returning to presence. Now I want to extend that practice outward, and want to finish with one of my favorite practices, which is more of a proactive practice of mindfulness. And if you've heard me talk about it before, because I try to practice this, because it alters the way I see the world, and really clarifies the way I see the world and what I believe. And it's a simple challenge, and it's simply the practice of I wish you well. I wish you well. And what I mean by that is that the next time you walk up to the cash register at a grocery store, or the next time you're paying the toll at a toll booth, or the next time you have any kind of human interaction with a stranger, or even if you don't interact, you just cross paths on the street, what I would love for us to try, instead of going through our to-do list, instead of thinking of all the things that we have later, or even the frustrations of earlier in the day, for that moment, in that human interaction, if you're buying something at the grocery store and across from the cashier, I want you to just first ask yourself, what's my body doing right now? And if there's tension, again, relax it. And then take a deep breath in. Follow that by a long exhale. And look across at the person. Look into their eyes. Maybe even one practice that I heard is so helpful, and to do this is ask yourself, what color are their eyes? Just to really make sure you've tuned into the other person. And inside you, I want us to know that we do have neurons wrapped around our heart that are exactly like the ones around in our brain. And what I want you to do while all the cashier stuff's going on, they're taking your money, you're getting the receipt, all that, I want you to recognize the fact that the person standing across from you is someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's father, someone's mother, someone's brother, someone's sister. They had a first birthday just like you did and just like your child did, and they had struggles just like we have struggles. They have joys just like we have joys. And so instead of the cashier being a person that stands between getting from this line to my car, let that cashier be an opportunity for you to simply, inside your own heart, acknowledge their humanity, acknowledge their breath, acknowledge their spiritus, and within yourself, not out loud, just inside yourself, just say, I wish this person well. I wish this person well. As you see someone walking down the street toward you, just say to yourself, I wish this person well. As you walk into a room like this, say to yourself, I wish these people well. It's said internally, but I can assure you over time it is felt externally, just simply by the presence of your being. We can all think of people that we love being around, that when they walk in the room, you feel their warmth, you feel their love, and it's because of how they walk into that room more than any words they ever say. And I ultimately challenge us as if we're in a disagreement with someone, while the disagreement's going on, feel the tension in our body, take a breath, and say, I wish this person well. It changes the whole purpose of the disagreement from who's right to simply what is right, and what is always right is wanting each other to be better than we were the moment before. So I hope you see how the practices can intertwine to where we can have compassion for ourselves, which gives us the ability to have compassion for others. The practice is simple because we're provided with the opportunity throughout the day and all these little moments where we have these spikes of energy and opportunities to settle. It doesn't mean perfection, it means being aware of our imperfections and loving ourselves regardless of it. And when we make a mistake, just make sure we fix it on the next time around. And ultimately, wishing people well. Wishing people well. And as we make this a practice and a habit in your own life, I just ask you to also observe how your life changes as a result, simply by wishing for the better of others, as well as for yourself, because that's simply what you all deserve. And with that, I simply want to say I thank you, and I wish you all well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. I know that gave me a lot to think about, which is really amazing. And as many of you all know out there, this is a new job for me, and I'm going to have to ask for a lot of forgiveness probably, but we did try to take the program. I don't know that we asked Alex if that was okay, but if it worked and it's okay, we are going to try to post that on the website. So I'll make sure all that happened and get permission, but I know that he gave me a lot to think about, and I'd love to listen to it again. As to forgiveness, somehow, and I'm going to just say they were standing up. I'm not sure if they were or they weren't. I didn't introduce two other people at the table that I'm sitting at. I sat back down and went, huh. Also at the head table are Sally Partlow and Kristen Heidel, and they are collegiate moms and big fans of Alex Peavy, so I thought that it would be nice to have them at the table with him to give him some familiar faces. So I thank them for being there. I also have other thanks and gratitude that I want to share with you today, and that is for our Mary Marthas. And our Mary Marthas are the ladies that set the tables and served us our lunch today, which is a blessing. And they were Gail Harris, Barbara Bingham, Sue Folks, Adele Topham, and Trick V. Garter. So thank you, ladies. And thank you to Mary Garrison and Kathy Smallwood, who were greeting you at the door. I hope that you got to speak to them. And I also want to thank, and I know a lot of them aren't even in the room, but I want to thank a lot of the staff members. Many of you know this, maybe you don't, but there's so many people here that make all this happen. And so a special thank you, if you see any of these people, to Terry Sears and Lee Perry, Carolyn Wright, Suzanne Reel for playing the piano, to Kendra Jackson and Ron Lewis, because they did a lot behind the scenes to get us to this moment, and I thank them for that. Also, thank you to Terry White. She always does our beautiful flowers. And I will tell you this, and hopefully we won't fight over them. All of them are for sale except for the flowers on the front 3 tables. So the front tables, you may not buy them, but if you'd like to take some flowers home to enjoy or take them to a friend, you may give $5 to Blair Tuning, and you may take them with you. So, as we prepare to leave today, I want you to keep these church members in your prayers, and they are these people. The following people have special concerns, and they are Dorothy Kufler, Ernie Neer, Karen Sigel, who I want to share with you all because she's a past moderator, that she had a successful hip surgery yesterday, and she's going home today. Also, Drake Watson, Joan Wilton, and Finn Blumenthal. We celebrate with our cute and dear Annie Franklin and her new husband, Thomas Arvin. Annie has been an intern here. They were married on September 2nd. And we appreciate these people who serve in the military: Edward Allen, Jenny Siegel Burkett, Matthew Horton, and Nathan Thomas Mead. That's all I'm going to say. I just want to say we were so happy you were here. And we meet again on October 3rd for lunch. And I hope to see many of you again then. So we are adjourned. Thank you.